Hi there, welcome back. I hope this finds you well. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to celebrate 23 years of marriage with my husband, and it was really awesome. We had just had a low-key celebration with the kids, and every year when we celebrate our anniversary, we can't help but reminisce about our wedding day and the events surrounding it. So, on that note, I wanted to share with you in this video about the ways that narcissists and toxic individuals can sabotage or try to sabotage your special occasion. Just to give you a little background, my husband and I were dating for about 10-12 months and got engaged in the summer of 1997. And my husband planned a very elaborate proposal, and he also had an elaborate engagement party. Now, my family was not living there at the time, and so my husband offered to fly them out so that they could participate in the engagement party, and for various reasons, commitments, things like that, they weren't able to come. So we did things a little unconventionally, and we planned our wedding in San Francisco. I know a lot of times the bride will have her wedding where she's from, and then the family will pay for it and all of that. We didn't do it that way. We paid for our own wedding up front in cash, and we got married in San Francisco. And my family flew to San Francisco to be a part of the ceremony. I planned the wedding for December, and it was just enough time for me to get things coordinated and lined up with the help of a couple of friends who acted as coordinators, and to get it in before the end of '97. So we planned this elaborate wedding. We had a huge wedding party of 18 people. We had a big church, gorgeous church, and we had over 300 people in attendance. And it was, holiday time, so everything was lit up and decorated, for the holidays. So it really was beautiful. And so my family came out, and I made arrangements prior to our rehearsal and dinner to pick my mother up from their hotel and to take her shopping for bridesmaids gifts and just some last minute items for me before I went off for my honeymoon and all of that, and also to have lunch together. So when I got to the hotel, my dad had other plans, and he ended up, he told me to sit down, and he basically pulled everybody together, and he decided to have a family forum. And during this family forum, he decided to bring up what I'll call the figurative slop bucket of things that were bothering him, that he was angry about, that hurt him or maybe embarrassed him, things that I did as a kid, things that were going on at that time. He brought up an essay that I wrote when I was in elementary school that I think embarrassed him. And he brought up me not being a good sister to my younger brother. He brought up the fact and cried over the fact that both of my grandmothers were unable to attend the ceremony. One of them at the time was dying of cancer, and the other was very old and was afraid to fly. And he also made some judgments about my husband from his brief interaction with him at the groom honoring, and basically accused him of being gay and told me that I was going to get a disease if I married him and not to do it, during which time my brother chimed in and fell at my feet and begged me not to marry my husband. And my dad also threatened to not walk me down the aisle and to leave San Francisco and to take my brother with him. And my brother was one of the groomsmen. Anyway, it was overwhelming, to say the least. I looked at my mother a few times to kind of say, like, okay, are you going to do something about this? Can we get out of here? And, she had nothing. And there were times when I went on the emotional roller coaster ride with my dad. Definitely it bothered me that my grandmothers were not able to attend. And there was just a lot going on. It was just frustrating. I was ready to go. I was on a schedule. we were there at the hotel participating in his forum for hours. And I really had a specific schedule laid out for me to be able to get the bridesmaids' gifts, enjoy some time with my mom, and get back to my apartment so that I could change for the rehearsal and the dinner. So this really threw my day off. And not only that, but I was filled with anxiety on top of the emotional roller coaster ride of trying to defend some of the things that he was saying, but also too, being upset too about my grandmothers and, the fact that they weren't there. And it was just all over the place. And it was just a hot mess, to say the least. At one point, I looked at my brother and I said, look, I apologize if I did anything that made you feel like I abandoned you or that I wasn't there for you. And I kind of was a little defensive about the essay. I'm like, okay, really? Like, how old was I when I wrote that? And it was the truth. I mean, it was something about like describe where you live and write about that. And I kind of took a different approach. We lived in an apartment with a bunch of college students, and it was a small building, but there were students that lived in our building, and they were loud, and they threw parties every weekend, and they were drunk, and there were drunk people laying on the front yard. And I mean, I wrote about that, and it was the truth. But, my dad, I think it just bothered him, having it thrown back in his face like that in the form of an essay that was published in a school booklet. But really, I mean, it was like kindergarten to sixth grade. Really? So that being said, that was a crazy time and very frustrating. And finally, my mom spoke up and was like, you know what, we really do need to leave. And so she and I hopped into a cab and raced to the mall to buy the bridesmaids gifts and have lunch. And during that time, I slipped away from the table to call our minister and let him know what was going on so that he could help. I said, hey, SOS here, my dad is, freaking out, and, I don't know what to do. And I'm at the mall with my mom, but, I really need your help here. I mean, he's threatening not to participate. He's threatening to take my brother with him and not be a part of the wedding. I don't know what to do. And so he assured me that he would, take care of it. He would do his part to, have my back. And anyway, my mom and I finished our time together, and I dropped her back off at the hotel. And then I hustled back to my apartment to get ready for the rehearsal and the dinner. And it was very interesting because when we got to the rehearsal, all of the members of the wedding party were busy rushing up to my parents and introducing their spouses and, trying to make them, feel comfortable and going out of their way to be friendly and welcoming and all of that kind of thing and embrace them. And then at the dinner, during the time of sharing, one of my relatives stood up and told my husband that he was going to be watched from the Midwest from a distance in terms of his conduct. And when my husband had the opportunity to stand up and share and toast, he accepted the challenge and encouraged my family members to watch. And here we are 23 years later. So, ways that narcissistic and toxic individuals can sabotage or try to sabotage your special occasion. Number one, by focusing everyone's attention on them. So in the case of my wedding and the events surrounding my wedding, this was my time, this was my event, this was my occasion. And my dad decides to, at the last minute, as I'm trying to go do stuff with my mom and get ready, have this big family forum for hours. So that really derailed my schedule. Number two, letting their emotions rule the day. So I told you about the emotional roller coaster ride. I mean, we went through the gamut around that time in the hotel room, from my dad got really angry and raged to crying and to, just all these different things. And you know what? At the end of his rant, he said, you know what? I'm really glad that we had this talk. I feel better. Number three, either threatening to leave and or not participate in the special occasion. A girl having her dad walk her down the aisle on her wedding day is one of the most significant things that can happen in a father-daughter relationship. And literally, I kid you not, my dad threatened to not walk me down the aisle the day before my wedding. And, it was hurtful. And then to threaten to take my brother away with him, who was one of the groomsmen, just added insult to the injury. Number 4, bringing up the past. Now, in my case, my dad brought up this essay that I wrote as an elementary school student that I think embarrassed him at the end of it all, or at the root of it all. I think he was embarrassed. But it could be anything. I mean, there are some times when narcissistic or toxic individuals will decide to tell a funny, embarrassing story about the person who is the focus of the event. And that can detract from the event, or make the person feel small, or make them feel embarrassed, or, that type of thing. Number 5, launch a smear campaign. So my dad, in my situation, he not only had his own opinions about the wedding party and about my husband and, all of these attitudes and pent up feelings that he vomited onto me and my family in the hotel room, but he also made a point of telling all the other family members who would listen about his negative viewpoints about my husband and about the wedding party, and his, disdain for the wedding, my husband, my decision to marry my husband, etc. I'm much older now and wiser, and now that I know what I was dealing with, even at that time, what would I tell my younger self? Well, I thought about this. Number 1, I would tell my younger self to set your boundaries, girl. Set your boundaries in terms of your time, your schedule, or, if we did need to discuss some things, to keep it brief and to put a timestamp on it, and then to, cut it off after a certain point so that I could get on with the rest of my day in preparation for my event. Number 2, own the 5% of what's being said as true, or acknowledge it. And I feel like I did that. I feel like I did listen, and I did acknowledge and apologize for the things that I needed to own. Specifically to my brother, I think I offered up another apology about the essay, but the thing is, I had apologized for the essay at the time that it happened, which, as I mentioned, was in elementary school. Number 3, I would tell my younger self, to modify the special event and move on. So for example, if my dad had pulled the plug and decided not to walk me down the aisle and to take my brother with him and not participate in the wedding, I would have probably asked another man to walk me down the aisle, or had my mother walk me down the aisle. And then as far as the wedding party is concerned, we had 18 people, 9 groomsmen, 9 bridesmaids. So if my brother had been pulled, we would have had 8. So I would have asked one of the ladies to kindly sit and enjoy the ceremony with the other attendees, and not stand with us at the altar, or not stand beside us at the altar, just to balance everything out, especially for photography, or just for that sense of balance. And I'm sure that one of my good friends who was next to me when I got married would have been more than happy, and would have had the maturity and humility to say, you know what, Leslie, I got you. Like, I'll have a seat, and definitely do your thing, and that type of thing. Or, maybe just decide, you know what, we're going to have uneven numbers, and we'll have a story to tell behind it. Number 4, get help from clear-minded, grounded, objective individuals in dealing with the narcissistic or toxic individual. Sometimes people can really get in their feelings around special occasions, and it can get out of hand. And if it's your special occasion, you've got to focus, and you've got to stay grounded, and the show must go on. So if you've got somebody or maybe a couple people that can step in and really focus on the narcissistic or toxic individual and kind of help, get them together or help deal with them, then that can be helpful to you so that you're more freed up to enjoy your special occasion. We've all had narcissistic and toxic individuals sabotage or try to sabotage our special occasions. It's not fun, it's not festive, and it's definitely not okay. What's your experience with narcissistic or toxic individuals sabotaging or trying to sabotage your special occasion? Comment below. I'd love to hear your stories. Just remember that you're not alone and you're not crazy. Know who you're dealing with, know who you are. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.